when I was in undergraduate school. And so for years I taught piano and privately, because my kids were in school and they were home. I taught piano and voice, and I taught music in the public schools. And all the time my children were in public school, I always, because they did away with music teachers, so I would go and volunteer to teach. So that was kind of my undergraduate thing. My graduate work was at William and Mary in school psychology and counseling, and I am a licensed professional counselor. If anybody has a problem, let me know. I remember going to a conference one time, and these four guys were standing, in one of those little booths, and they were all hunched over talking, but this one guy. So I went over and handed him my card, and said, "If you need professional help here," and they all just, died laughing. But I always got invited to their parties, and they give good parties. The vendors and those things. But anyway, so how did I end up here? When my husband and I are celebrating our 60th anniversary this summer, and thank you. And so when we were first started, he said, "Well, now, if you really want to make a difference," because I kept saying I'd get upset about things that were happening on the school board or that happening in the city. He says, you need to get into politics. I said, "I will never get into politics. It is just too dirty." And let me tell you something, it's pretty dirty. I mean, my favorite saying is, well, I don't know whether to do that or not. No, really, it is a grateful heart is a magnet for miracles. And what happened when I was elected 3 years ago was a real miracle. One person in the community gave $50,000 to try to get rid of me. The mayor took a flyer against me. The Commonwealth attorney, the sheriff, the whole, I never in my life saw it. So I made an appointment with the guy that gave $50,000, and I went to meet him, and I said, "You don't need to spend $50,000, you really don't, again, because if I run, I hope you'll support me." And the only reason I didn't, that time I had voted for many of his projects, both on Hampton Roads Transit, because I was head of that. I said, "But I didn't vote for one of your projects because you looked at me in the eye and you gave me your word that it would not cost the citizens anything. And I asked you twice, and you told me, no, there'll be no city money, no nothing." 39 million later, I said, that's why I didn't vote for it. And in the planning commission, which things have to go through the planning commission first, he made the same statement, so there was one other person who was on the planning commission that voted against the things too. Don't lie to me. If you're going to expect city money, let me know, But anyway, that's neither here nor there, because it was a miracle, and it was a lot of prayer involved, and I really felt that I needed to be available for some projects that I am still very much interested in. At any rate, you want to hear about your government, and I'm glad for that. There are a number of things, one of which I have tried ever since I've been on council, to make the city council meetings, alternate throughout the city, because we are a long city. And people in Denby, it's 40 miles. It's over 40 miles for some of them right at the tip, to come down and be able to speak for 3 minutes. That's ridiculous. We need to be accessible, and that's one of the issues I have worked on, and I'm still working on. As you saw in the paper a couple weeks ago, I don't know when it was, a month ago. And that will happen. I'm sure I've got 4 votes, because the thing you've got to realize when you're on city council, and Vince can tell you this, you've got to have 4 votes to do anything. So anyway, your city, here you are. And that's and this is your mayor, McKinley Price, who is elected by the whole city. We have 3 areas that you'll get this later on. He is the one at large. just like the school board chairman is elected at large. Yes. Tina Vick and I went on council at the same times, and we remain really good friends, and usually support each other. I can't think of 3 or 4 times that we haven't voted alike, because we talk a lot and we communicate. But she's a great gal, and she is our vice mayor. We select her. That's all right. We select the vice mayor within the group. Now, this is your newly elected representative from the Central District. We are the Central District. And David Jenkins was elected last year. And he is one of 2. I am the other one from Central District. Sandra Cherry is one of the 2 South District representatives. In other words, each district, South District, Central District, North District, has 2 representatives that are elected in their district. That's all you get to vote for. Okay. Marcellus Harris came on 2 years ago and then ran for mayor last year. Didn't make it, but he is a school counselor. I've known him, and probably a lot of you know his father. Marcellus had a church right on campus, on CNU campus, and boy, was that he got a lot of money for it. His First Baptist Church, Morrison, moved up north in the North District, but he was that was a big church right on the campus there, and I know it took a long time to get that negotiated, but we're glad it did. So anyway, Marcellus, and the other person who has represented the North District for 17, 18 years is Sharon Scott. Okay. And I'm your other district up front in the Central District. I don't know why they put them in like this. They shouldn't put them together, I think. But anyway, I think it went alphabetically, right? So there we are. The mayor is elected by the entire city. The 6 citizens elected, 2 each from each district. And I remember the first time I ran, I got this question. Is city council a policy board, or is it a different kind of board, legislative board? Well, it's both in one way, but we are primarily a policy board. We approve the programs and we control the funding in the city, which I'll get to in a few minutes. And we're ruled by a charter, and the charter determines the rules of procedure that we follow. And I love this one. Council makes decisions after input from citizens and staff. Well, yes, but as we'll illustrate by the city farm, we don't, not everybody listens to the people. That's the problem. Our city manager, our city attorney, and city clerk are all appointed by council. And we have I've worked with 5 different city managers, and I think we finally got the best. She is delightful. She moved up from assistant city manager. She knows the city, she loves the city, and she's very easygoing, but she's tough. And she has brought us, in her toughness, with all kinds of people getting upset about it. But she held out until we got the best, if you haven't had the best police chief I have ever known. If you have not had him to come and talk, you should, because he is wonderful. He hit the ground running. I was at last July when he first got here on a 95-degree day, walking from apartment building to apartment building, door to door, with about 20 other policemen, sweat running, but he is out there on the streets, and he says, we'll pay, in some of these that we knocked on their doors, we're going to pay him another visit because of what was going on. He's great. Same thing with the fire chief. She held up, And she got what I think is just a wonderful fire chief. I don't know him as well, but I know he is committed and he is out there and he is very, very good for our city. We also, and I want to put a plug in here. By the way, you do know there's a former city councilman sitting here. Your Vince is here. Yeah. How many were you on? Two or three?
2 terms.
2 terms. Okay.
And then I did a harder job. We adopted a little boy.
I agree with you. I couldn't agree more. Except when you adopted, at our age, a new dog. That's pretty taxing too. But the boards, commissions, and committees, if please get involved and serve on one of these. The Planning Commission is probably one of the ones that most people want to get on because they see that as a stepping stone. I never served on it to council, but these are important functions that our citizens serve the city. And so get online if you or call and find out what's available and apply to serve on one of these boards. I mean, they have a lot of boards. One is, I'm trying to think of planning, redevelopment and housing. My good friend is on that. And they, you know, they do good work. And most of them are not paid, but they're just volunteers. Some of them are the planning commission's paid because they do have to go a lot of places in the city. But it's a way to get involved and contribute to your city. And I urge you to do that. And you're not too old. Nobody is as old in this room as I am. So you can do it. So, okay. I really challenge you to get involved that way. This is our city manager, and she appoints the department directors. She oversees the city's operations. She hires, with input of course, there are about 3,500 employees. She appoints the fire chief and the police chief. She provides leadership and on the day-to-day things. The city manager's office ensures quality services and programs are available to meet the needs of our citizens and the business community. As I told you, I really admire and support Cindy. And I have worked with 5 different, I was working as a volunteer before I got elected to the school board for 2 terms. Yeah, 2 terms. Anyway, I don't know whether I want to speak to it now. You tell me about what's happening with the school board and this. Yeah, you want to hear about it. Okay, the fire chief this year and the police chief had limited, just like everybody does, had limited funds. The police chief decided to reorganize and let one of the positions go in order to be able to pay more. He worked with Cindy and they figured this out, and they are now competitive in the region so that we get our police officers and they stay. They don't go somewhere else after training. Same thing with the fire department. Same thing with human services. Van, I call Van, who is in charge of human services. We've had a great influx of needy and homeless and you name it in this city. And the day center, if you all have not seen the day center, it's called 4 Oaks. It's right beside the old Daily Press. Yeah, and it is a wonderful facility. I hope one day it'll be all 24 hours, but it's now just a day center. But we're doing some really good things. And to have this, having served on the school board, there's always been a little bit of tension, but nothing like this. And when you look at the fact that the fire chief and the head of human services and head of public works and the engineer, all of these people came with the budget. We knew how much money we had. We didn't want to raise taxes. And so they worked with Cindy, and she worked with them. And the only one that would not accept and would not work with her was the new superintendent. And that's really sad, because she really gave them, but she didn't give it to them the way he wanted it, or the school board wanted it. So they got 13.1 million, which is what they asked for. But 2.4 of that million was from a different source and will only be a one-time thing. So it's not, they can't count on it every year. But what can I say? I don't want to be ugly. But I don't know how people can say to us, city council, we'll take your money, but on these terms, that we get this, 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 and this. I mean, I don't know how it works in other families, but the man with the gold rules, you know, with a funding body, and you don't give us what we have to do to give you money, you know, you're getting what you ask for, but it in the way you want it. So that is very disturbing to me, and it's very, I plan to write hopefully an op-ed on it, because you got to look at the big picture. Okay, this child, every one of you have children or grandchildren, needs a good education, and we want the best. When I was running, I wanted this to be the education city. That's how, you know, I trained teachers for 13 years at Hampton University in a clinic. So I know what it takes to be a good teacher, and what it takes to make children or have available to children what they need. And when I was on the school board, we had 4,000 more students than we have now. And the budget was much less than it is now. And yet, it's never enough. And I guess I don't understand that. But I have this child, and I want to make sure they have a good education in this city. But I also want to make sure that the fire department has equipment and men to put out a fire if that child's house catches on fire. And I want to make sure that some burglar doesn't go in the house and shoot the family because we don't have a good police department. And I want to make sure that maybe the child is being physically or sexually abused. I want to make sure in human services we have a person who can go out and do a case study on it. But if they're understaffed, that wouldn't happen either. You've got to look at everything. If the roads are so bad, or there's an unsafe bridge that their car goes over and you know, it collapses. So all of those things are important to this one child, not just education. I want them all to be the best, but we have to look at the big picture. We need resources across the city for that child, not just education. So, and what my experience is, I used to give this book to my students, my graduate students, and it was, the teacher is the key. It's not how much money you throw at it. I mean, they're saying, oh, well, the schools are old. Yes, but you know, the school that is oldest is the one that parents have to get in a lottery to get them in. It's Old Hilton School. It's the oldest one in the city. And everybody wants their kid to go to Hilton. So it's not just the building. It's what goes on in that classroom that's important. I get carried away. Thank you. Go ahead. Alan Archer is our assistant city manager, and he was in charge of that day center. It really was his passion. He really wanted to see that. And Alan came to us from Petersburg as a city manager, and he came and accepted the assistant city manager. And he's quiet, but he is a really good fellow. Okay. We have a vacant, again, our city manager is doing the work without the second. At one time when I got on council, there were 3 assistant city managers, and you remember that, Vince. But we would rather see things, you know, she would rather work harder and make sure, excuse me, that we don't have to raise taxes to have the revenue we need to run the city. And these are some of she oversees all of those, with she and Alan, all of those areas. Parks, recreation, tourism is a biggie with me. I'm very much in favor, and I know Vince's wife came down and spoke as Adrian does. I don't think Adrian has missed but one city council meeting that had, and that's what it takes. You know, they really like him. Well, they'll give up and not come back. He comes every time, and it's wonderful. And I think our city manager, when we meet one-on-one, is listening to the people. I'll put it that way. So I have real hope, because one of the reasons I keep running is I don't want... The city attorney told me that that piece of land cannot be sold as long as there are 2 people on council who will not sell it, will not vote to sell it. So I'm one of those people. So I think it's important that until that's settled, I probably will stay there, or if I can, anyway.
How are you talking about the city farm?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
That it's becoming a park, staying a park. It is already zoned a park. They tried to change that and tried to slip it by us to change it, but we didn't do it. Go ahead. All right, this is how our city government is organized, and you can see that in your handout, so I'm not going to go over that. Go ahead. Mabel Washington Jenkins is our clerk. Have a good trip. He's going to see his daughter. He told me early. And she's been there ever since I've been on it. She was assistant before that, and then she's the city clerk. She's just wonderful. Mabel is so efficient and does so many things that you can see, and you will have in your handout you can read about. But she's just great. And she has 2 people helping her, and she should have 3, but she's trying to save money too. So, Collie Owens. One time when I was running the city council, I let the mayor's youth, I was in charge of it, and their leader of 2 years was leaving to go to law school. And so they asked if they could go to get pizza, the whole group of them, mayor's youth, and talk to him about how they were going to run themselves until we got a new director for them. And it stayed on the front page of the paper. It was $88. I wish I had taken it out of my own salary, because it was on the front page of the paper, my picture, misuse of people's funds. That was what I was accused of, public funds. Because I allowed them to take their leader of 2 years to have a piece of pizza. But you see, there was somebody in higher office that didn't want me to run and didn't want me to win. So that was, I mean, I would wake up in the morning and just not want to get out of bed because I was so hurt by it. And as I